In May of 1999, a young girl who had just turned 14 entered a Hong Kong police station alone. Her name was Lau, and she hysterically told police that she was being haunted by the ghost of a tortured woman. Police were initially confused and skeptical until she provided another detail. She told them she had contributed to the murder of the tortured woman. This turned out not to be just a ghost story, but rather one of the worst crimes in Hong Kong's history. Police followed Lau to an apartment where they found a sickening piece of evidence. The boiled, decapitated skull of Fan Man-Yee was found sewed into a large Hello Kitty plushie, corroborating Lau's claims. This alone may seem disturbing, but it's nothing compared to the brutal torture Fan underwent for the 28 days prior to her death. To understand how it got to this point, we have to take a brief look into Fan's past. As a young girl, Fan was abandoned by her family and was subsequently raised in an orphanage. However, she was abandoned once again when she reached the orphanage's age limit of 15 and was forced to live on the streets. Now homeless, she resorted to drug addiction, prostitution, and petty crime. She eventually began working in a brothel at age 21. One of her frequent clients was another drug addict named Ing Chi-Yuen. They fell in love and got married in 1996. Fan became pregnant in 1998 and decided to turn her life around. She quit drugs and prostitution and began working at a nightclub. Her life seemed to be looking up. However, behind the scenes, her relationship with Chi-Yuen had many issues. Neighbors reported hearing them frequently having screaming matches, and it is said that Fan's husband was abusive towards her. The baby was constantly crying due to all the fighting, prompting Fan to leave Chi-Yuen, even though she could hardly afford to live on her own. Now in need of extra money, Fan went back to her roots and began associating with one of her past clients, Man-Lok. In desperate need of money, she made a mistake that altered the course of her life. In early 1999, she stole Chan's wallet, which contained the Hong Kong equivalent of $500. Chan was a Wo-Shing-Wo triad member, a gang involved in extortion, drug trafficking, gambling, and prostitution. Upon finding out that Fan had stolen his wallet, he began searching for her with his henchmen shing-cho and wai-lun. They found Fan and forced her to pay back what she had stolen, with an interest of an additional $1,300. When she told them that she would need more time to pay it back, they decided to kidnap her and prostitute her until Chan's funds were recouped. They brought her to a 5-bedroom apartment rented by Chan. The apartment was strangely decorated with Hello Kitty products such as bed sheets, curtains, and stuffed animals. Tragically, this location would be the last place Fan would ever see. On the first night of Fan's captivity, her captors beat and raped her while on drugs. It was at this point that the plan to prostitute her changed. They decided to make this nightmare a routine, coming to the conclusion that it was too fun to give up. They would string her up and use her as a punching bag, sometimes even leaving her strung up overnight. Or they would keep her on the ground and kick her in the head up to 50 times. Chan's 13-year-old girlfriend, Lau, witnessed this brutal event and even took part in it. They eventually got bored of beating Fan with their fists and kicks, and decided to think of new ways to inflict as much pain as possible on her. They started using weapons such as metal bars, kitchen utensils, and pieces of furniture. They rubbed spices such as oyster sauce and chili oil into her wounds. Her wounds became infected and oozed with pus, causing immense pain to Fan. To prevent her from trying to escape, the men dropped burning candle wax and plastic on her legs and feet so that she wasn't able to walk. Lau took part in many of the beatings, perhaps feeling pressured by the older men to do so. They forced her to consume the 13-year-old's feces and the men's urine. If she spit it out, they would beat her harder. They forced her to say that she enjoyed the beatings and beat her harder when she refused. Her unspeakable torture lasted 28 days, from March 17th to April 14th, 1999, until she experienced traumatic shock and died. The 13-year-old girl found Fan's body in the bathtub and alerted the other captors. At this point, they started the 10-hour process of dismembering her and boiling her remains, and then placing her flesh in the refrigerator. They boiled her decapitated head and decided to hide the skull. They ripped open a large Hello Kitty plushie, put Fan's skull inside it, and sewed it back shut. Lau also took part in the process of getting rid of her remains, and was likely in shock at the time. But as weeks passed, it began to weigh on her. In May of 1999, a month after Fan's passing, Lau was ridden with guilt and claimed to be haunted by Fan's ghost. She went to the police station and confessed what she and the men had done, leading them back to the apartment. Police uncovered the Hello Kitty plushie containing Fan's boiled skull as well as dozens of dead bugs. Most of her remains were never recovered. However, some of her internal organs were recovered in a plastic bag, as well as a necklace belonging to Fan. Lau continued to cooperate with law enforcement, testifying in court and giving damning information about the captors. In return, she was granted immunity. Meanwhile, the arrests of the captors began taking place. Chan was living with his wife and newborn baby when his apartment was raided by a SWAT team on May 28, 1999. Wai-Lun fled from Hong Kong to China, but was arrested on February 14, 2000. Shing-cho was also arrested, and the trial began on October 20, 2000. As is typically seen in criminal cases involving multiple perpetrators, each man blamed the brunt of responsibility on the others and minimized their own role in the crime. The defense claimed that Fan had died from a drug overdose and not from the captors' actions. Due to her body being so badly tampered with, evidence to refute this could not be found. Because of this, the men could only be convicted with manslaughter rather than murder. Thankfully, each of the men were sentenced to life in prison. However, they did have the possibility of parole after 20 years. The judge stated, "Never in Hong Kong in recent years has a court heard of such cruelty, depravity, callousness, brutality, violence, and viciousness." Fan's son and ex-husband reportedly now reside in Singapore, where they have started a new life. The necklace of Fan's that was found at the crime scene was given to her son as a memory of her. The torture of Fan Man-Yee is one of the most tragic and disturbing cases in Hong Kong history, and the sickening actions her captors took is truly something of nightmares.